What's up, music lovers? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel, and welcome to the first album review I've ever done on this channel. Not something I've ever done before, and probably not something I'll do consistently going forward, but for the metal gods, when they release a new album, I'm going to make an exception. And before I go in and get into my thoughts on the 19th Judas Priest album, Invincible Shield, if you're new to this channel, which I imagine you probably are, please go ahead and subscribe if you like rock, metal, progressive rock. You know, pretty much if like all of these bands seem like bands you're interested in talking about. Throughout their careers, Judas Priest has always kept an eye on what's going on around them in the music scene and taken bits and pieces that they're inspired by, that they enjoy, and incorporate it into their own sound. And they do that a lot on this album. While this album still sounds completely and entirely Judas Priest, there are little hints of baby metal or maybe Ghost going on, and the production also sounds really crisp and clean. The first song on this album, Panic Attack, has an intro that sounds like they were listening to dance music for a bit, but they still make it work in the context of a heavy metal record, a heavy metal album. And I just really love that in 2024, more than 50 years after they were formed, they are still taking chances. What makes this album so enjoyable to listen to, without a doubt, is just how much energy the band is bringing into the recording. Every band member gets a chance to shine on this album, and Rob Halford is sounding unbelievable. The guy is 72 years old, and he has so much more energy and vigor, and his voice just sounds flawless on this album. I do not know how he does it. For a band like Judas Priest that has been making albums since the 70s, it could be easy to just go into the studio and be like, oh, we've done this a billion times before, let's just record it, put it out, done, we know it's gonna sell. And when you listen to the performances on this album, it's so obvious that that did not happen. They were really pushing themselves to get the best take, to do it again, to try their hardest, and to not just half-ass it. As for some of the individual tracks on this album that stood out to me, I think the intro, Panic Attack, was pretty incredible. Devil in Disguise has an absolutely nasty, sick riff that it starts off with. But for me personally, the best part of this album is the 4 songs starting off with A Crown of Horns and ending with Escape from Reality. Those 4 songs, Crown of Horns, As God Is My Witness, Trial by Fire, and Escape from Reality, are just kind of one banger after another. And the whole album's solid, but those 4 together is just like, you know, some albums have that section where you're like, yeah, that's the part that you want to re-listen to. Trial by Fire has some pretty good lyrics in particular, talking about mob mentality and people's inclination to want to find someone they can just burn at the stake for their own entertainment, whether that be metaphorically or in this case literally in the song. Favorite tracks from this album are probably Devil in Disguise, Crown of Horns, and Trial by Fire, but you know, the album is pretty consistent. There's not really a bad song on it. There are some songs that kind of blend together at times, it seems, but that could also be because it's just the first time I've listened to it, and it might take a couple more listens for it to really kind of soak in. As much as I can listen to this album and kind of objectively think that it is one of their best albums, it's right up there with Firepower or Painkiller, just solid. It's just good all the way through. For me personally, it didn't grab me as much as maybe like Sad Wings of Destiny did, but that's one of my all-time favorite albums, so can you really blame it? And maybe it's just for me personally with Judas Priest, because they were such an important band for me when I was young. I've heard them so much that, I don't know, I just don't get quite as excited about new music from them, or honestly from any of the bands behind me, as I used to. But I think that has more to do with me having grown up with this stuff and kind of being interested in other stuff, you know, bands like Caligula's Horse or Periphery or Haken or what have you. So that's not at all a criticism of Judas Priest or the album. It's just kind of more a reflection on where I'm at with music personally. I think that's a normal thing for a lot of musicians. It's kind of weird to explain, but like the bands that you just worshipped when you were younger, who you kind of like owe so much to, as you kind of grow and develop, and the more music you learn and the more bands you discover and the more artists you listen to and all that, you kind of, I don't know, you change a bit. But that's just me talking about myself. That doesn't really have anything to do with the album. I do think that this could be an album that if you're, you know, just getting into this kind of music and you hear, could really stick with you and kind of be one of those albums like what Sad Wings of Destiny or Stained Class is for me. I could easily see this being like that for a younger generation. All in all, this is just such a solid, incredible album, and the fact that Judas Priest is able to do something like this, you know, 50 years into their career is really, really impressive. The performances are absolutely insane. There's plenty of moments I was listening to the guitar riffs, how tight, how fast, how aggressive they are. Scott Travis kills it on the drums like he always does, and Rob Halford's voice is sounding just as good as ever. Examples like this are why I just think to myself when people say the talking point of like, oh, bands and artists should retire at a certain age. If they're having fun and they're putting out stuff this good, why should they? So thank you so much for watching. Those are my thoughts on the new Judas Priest album, and I appreciate you watching this video after you listen to the album, because let's be honest, there's no way you haven't already listened to the album. If you like this video, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, all that YouTube stuff. It really does help the channel grow, so I appreciate that, and I hope to see you at the next video.